once knew a woman who weighed 300 pounds. Every step she took was riddled with pain. I once knew a woman who had so many physical accidents in her life, she almost died 4 times. I once knew a woman who was at the top of her game in her career and was fired 9 months after she hit that threshold. Have you ever known anyone who seems to get a few more knocks than everybody else in their life? Have you ever known anyone who looks for the positive in the bad so that they can turn it around instantly? Or relatively? Madam Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, I know this woman intimately. She was me. I hit 300 pounds when I was 28, and the one thing I kept telling myself when I got to this place of agony and pain was that I didn't put it all on in one day. That kept me going day after day after day. For this was the first time in my life I approached weight loss in a healthful, long-term way. 5 years later, I had dropped 85 pounds. The same week I left my ex-husband, I started a new corporate job with a big, mega giant corporation. I was still working for the same company, but they became my client instead of my pay provider. 2.5 years from that point, I was thriving in what I did. The guys I worked with loved me because I would build relationship with them. I took time to get to know them. They'd drop everything in an emergency for me. My teams were successful, and I was handed those projects that only a miracle worker could bring about a good closure to. But I still struggled internally. I was still overweight, even though I'd lost this 85 pounds. And when I had left my ex-husband, I picked up a bad habit. Started smoking cigarettes again. I was traveling on business one night and walking through a downpour, beating myself up, loathing myself for continuing to smoke, even though I knew I wanted a healthful experience. And as I was ingrained in this conversation with my cigarette, I stepped across the rainy street and was hit by a pickup truck going 25 miles an hour. The cigarette went flying, and so did I. But me being who I am, I tried to go back to dance class just a week later. That didn't work. I looked for the bonus in this. The bonus was that I'd quit smoking, and I knew that instantly as my face broke on the hood of the truck. So I did what I only knew I could do at that point, and that was to get on a plane 2 weeks after, do a job, because that's all I knew was work, in Honolulu, and I flew to Kauai, Hawaii, where I stayed on a beach and recuperated for a week. I went back to work, but we can honestly say I was not at the top of my game any longer. In fact, all of my priorities were shifting. The chaos of the corporation had reached a peak, and I was no longer interested in fighting every day to bring them what they wanted, when what they wanted wasn't even clear to them. 9 months went by, and this exceptional performer was fired from her job. Fired from a job for the first time in her life. I knew it was coming. I even had a song prepared for my drive out of the parking lot. I am opening up in sweet surrender. I filed unemployment before I even stepped foot in my door at home. I knew I wasn't meant to be where I was anymore. I'd been in that place and grew up 30 minutes from there. Spent 35 years of my life rooted, solid in this culture, this community, this world. All these different families I had cultivated were slowly dissolving. So I put my house on the market, for sale by owner, in a down market. I had one woman come look at it. She bought it 30 days later, and I set off. Got in my car with 2 suitcases, and I moved to Kauai, Hawaii. Now, I did not drive my car all the way to Kauai, if you're asking. On Kauai, I thought I was going to live and stay there, but even my surroundings were impermanent. I lived in a tent for a year, and from that tent, I traveled to India with a group of people I had never met before in my life. I also spent some time in Thailand, and from that trip and a stay at an ashram and some very high-powered, high-vibrational stuff, I discovered that I wanted to be a life coach. 6 months later, I went to school in San Diego and had a wonderful week, walking into the room and being told, "You've always been a coach." I was like, "Oh yeah, I have." I did a lot of manifesting in that time because I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I wanted to do. And one of those things was a house sitting opportunity. I wanted to be in a mansion, on a hill, and just spending some time for free in someone else's space. That came to be, but not on Kauai. I ended up in Atlanta for 3 months, staying in a 7,000 square foot home and driving their Mercedes-Benz. It's great. At the end of that, I didn't know where I was going to live, and I wondered aloud to a friend, "I wonder where I'm going to live next." She said, "Celeste, every time you talk about Asheville, you light right up." And I knew in that moment I was coming here. When I got here, I was still having so much pain from getting hit by the truck, I could barely walk. A year later, 10 months later, it's only been 10 months, this girl has lost more than 100 pounds now, and I can back squat 125. This is testament to resiliency prevailing in my life. And I'm contemplating my story.